Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Tomorrow's Podiatry. Today, we are very excited to launch something incredibly special and share it with you. Tomorrow's Podiatry and I have teamed up to bring you a 10-week series of professorial interviews, aptly named Meet the Prof. During this 10-week series, we will interview 5 professors within the profession, and each candidate will be interviewed the first week. And then the following week, they will give a lecture on their chosen topic. Today, we have an amazing lineup of professors, so make sure to stay tuned in each week. To kick off the pilot of this series is none other than Professor Caroline McIntosh, one of the youngest female professors. So please join me in welcoming Professor McIntosh. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks very much for the invite. It's very exciting to be here this evening.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I'm so excited to have you. Let's get right into it. So what brought you into podiatry?
So I suppose I knew I always wanted to go into a healthcare profession. I think like lots of podiatrists, we know that we want to go into a care profession. We know that we want to help people, but we're maybe just not sure which profession we want to go into. And at the time I was doing my A-levels, I really thought that I was interested in physiotherapy, and I did a placement. I'm from Northumberland in England originally, and I did a placement at the Freeman Hospital in Newcastle, and I was on the orthopaedic ward then. So I enjoyed that, and then went on to apply for a physiotherapy place, and I just fell short of the A-level grades and didn't quite make it. And I was like, what do I do now? Where do I go? And again, I think it's where a lot of podiatrists find themselves sometimes. They come into the career by accident. I think probably because it's not something I'd heard of as a careers advisor. You know, had never really said anything about podiatry. People talk to you about physiotherapy, they talk to you about nursing or midwifery, but podiatry wasn't something that had ever been mentioned to me. And it was actually my biology teacher who said, have you heard about podiatry? And I went and got some prospectus for different universities and started reading around the subject. And I realized then that actually it was something that really appealed. And I think the thing that really appealed about podiatry was the fact that you could become a specialist in the foot and the ankle, and also be a pretty autonomous practitioner. There's lots of variability, flexibility to the career itself. So I then applied through clearing, as some people do, and I was offered a place immediately in Southampton, or I was offered an interview in Huddersfield, and I took the place in Southampton immediately, and I started my career on the BSc Podiatry programme at the Wessex School of Podiatry then in 1995. So I was there for 3 years. Although ironically then Huddersfield would play quite an important part of my own career development a number of years later. Yes.
So that's very interesting that you mentioned that it's not, that podiatry is it's a bit of a hidden field, and even with careers advisors, you found out through a biology teacher and not necessarily a careers advisor. So do you think there's something that we need to do to help promote the profession a little bit more so that careers advisors are recommending this as well? Is there anything that we can do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody who's in the profession needs to be an advocate for the profession, but I think the professional bodies can play a significant role there as well in terms of raising awareness with the public, but also with careers advisors, and the generation of materials and videos, and just really getting the word out there that podiatry is a fantastic career for people to come into. It has a lot of scope, and in terms of the different levels of practice people can work to. So, and ultimately, it's an extremely rewarding career at the end of the day. And I think really we all have a role to play in terms of raising awareness around the profession.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. So you've had an amazing career, and obviously, many more successes to come. What's been the most memorable moment for you, and what's been your highlight so far?
I think I've been fortunate that I've had so many highlights along the way. When I was reflecting back, it feels a little bit like this is your life, like when you're trying to think back to this type of interview setting, and where I've come from, and reflect back on the years and the different highlights. As I say, I've been fortunate to have so many. I think getting my PhD was obviously a particular highlight. So I worked extremely hard to I did my PhD by publication, so I worked pretty hard over a 5-year period to fairly prolifically undertake research and publish in order to be able to go down that route for a PhD. And yeah, I was particularly proud of myself in achieving the PhD by the age of 30. So
That's amazing. Like,
yeah,
and
it
you're
was an ambitious
one of the youngest, I think, youngest female professors to be
Well,
awarded that.
when I applied for the professorship in NUI Galway here in 2012, so I was successful at the age of 35 in becoming a professor. But I think back then there was something like 17 female professors in the entire university. Thankfully, statistics are changing, and there's a drive on gender equality issues. But at that time in 2012, I was one of 17 female professors in NUI Galway, which was an incredible situation to be in. I suppose what was yeah, and what was probably even more so was that I was actually 8 months pregnant with my first child when I was in my interview for the professorship. So
wow.
I think jaws nearly dropped when I walked through the door, and there I was with this great big bump. So.
Oh, good heavens. So it's interesting that you mentioned family. What's been you'd mentioned that one of the biggest challenges it was for you, especially, was to maintain that work-life balance. So, do you have any other hurdles that you've had to overcome during your profession or during your career?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I've dealt with in my career was setting up the new School of Podiatry here in the Republic of Ireland. So when I applied for the position, I was successful in the April, and I moved here in the June to Galway. And the program was due to commence in September 2008. So I arrived in June 2008, and there were students already had applied to the program. We didn't have professional validation or accreditation of the program. I literally arrived with my own laptop and my own printer, and I didn't even have a telephone line or anything. It was literally starting everything from scratch. So we only had something like 3 months to put all of the pieces in place to roll out the first year of the program, and to get involved with the professional bodies to get accreditation for the program. So I think the establishment of this first School of Podiatry was probably one of the biggest challenges that I've faced. And then as we were going through that setup process, the economic crisis really hit in Ireland. And it meant that plans that we originally had in terms of funding routes started to unravel in front of our eyes, and it was a real fight to try to maintain or to at least get equivalency in terms of, we were looking at a whole new build for our floor in the university, and we were looking at a whole new clinical facility to be built. So in the end, we ended up having a facility refurbished specifically for podiatric medicine. So it all worked out absolutely fine in the end, but it was there was a lot of challenges, a lot of sleepless nights in those early years. So, yeah.
It happens. I mean, just to if anything affecting funding, I think for me is just absolutely terrifying, because you need that that clinic to be up and running to be able to get everything out of it as a student. So having anything jeopardize that, like, I can't imagine what must have been going through your head at that moment.
Yeah.
What are your future plans?
I'm currently working as the head of the School of Health Sciences in NUI Galway. So at the moment, I oversee departments in occupational therapy, speech language therapy, health promotion, as well as being head of podiatric medicine. So I'm very much in a management and leadership role at the moment. So I'd like to, and that's obviously quite time consuming. So my term finishes in about 12 months' time. So when my term finishes, I'd really like to focus again on the development of the research program. We've spent, obviously, we've been here 13 years now in Galway. A lot of our priority was the establishment of the undergraduate program, and we're now starting to see postgraduate students coming through, either doing research masters. We now have quite a cadre of PhD students attached to the school as well, which is fantastic to see. So I'd really like to focus on kind of the next level of raising the profile of research in podiatric medicine.
Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. And I agree with what you've said earlier, which was we need a lot more evidence-based in podiatric medicine, and there's just simply not enough. So it's amazing that you're taking on this initiative, and I think it will greatly benefit future students as well. What are, if you have any opportunities that you missed out on, what are some of them?
I think I've always tried to take opportunities that as they present, and throughout the course of my career, really. So I don't feel that I've missed out on anything per se. I think as an academic, you do spend an awful lot of time maybe chasing grants or publications, or you can put a lot of effort and a lot of time into writing a grant application, and you can think it's fantastic and you think this is it, it's great, hopefully this is going to be successful, and then it isn't, and you have to kind of dust yourself off, pick yourself up and carry on and go on to the next thing. But so I wouldn't say I don't feel I've missed any opportunities. So just it would have been nice to have been more successful in some of the research funding along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we actually have a very lovely picture of you in clinical uniform.
Oh yeah.
And is there anything that you've learned over your career that you would advise any young clinician or any young grad at the moment, or even a younger version of yourself? What would you give an advice to her?
I can remember that picture being taken. It was actually a patient of mine who I was working in a GP practice, and he took that photograph and then came in and he printed it off for me at the next appointment. So it's actually one of the only pictures I actually have of me in clinical uniform. It's just, I suppose you just don't really take photographs of yourself in your uniform. But yeah, I think for anybody starting out now, I think podiatry, it's an exciting career, and I would definitely recommend that people, push themselves out of their comfort zone and take on new challenges, explore all different areas of practice before you decide which area you particularly want to specialize in, or work towards, have a career goal in mind and try to aspire to achieve that.
Yes, that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you today, and thank you for all of us who are going to be watching this interview later on. We hope you enjoyed this pilot episode of Meet Our Professor series. Make sure you tune in next week for Professor McIntosh's live lecture, where you can ask her any kind of question you'd like. Take care and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for tuning in.